Hey everybody, happy Halloween. It's time for our annual our annual podcast recording.
One of two that we do per year.
Do we do two a year? Man, we're really ramping it
and
up.
now it's one a year because Game of Thrones went off the air.
Oh, that's true. We got to find something to take its place. We'll do something for The Witcher for certain.
The Mandalorian.
And we could talk about The Mandalorian for certain too. But this is your host Devin Dixon. I'm joined by Justin Tapp.
Hello.
And also joining us is Kelly Hardigan.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about our the horror movie that we chose to watch for this Halloween. We do this every year. I think we kicked it off with Jason X. I think that was the inaugural run, and then we followed it up with Hellraiser. Had a very interesting discussion on that one. But this year, so I wanted to pick a movie that was a little bit out of the mainstream, something that wasn't like a franchise like Jason or Hellraiser. Something that was a little bit more indie, something a little bit more unique in its approach. And Kelly actually brought this movie to my attention. It was an indie movie that I guess had been bubbling up in, I guess, some popularity or a little bit of a minor cult following. It was released in 2019. I don't know when in the year, but sometime this year it snuck up. A movie called Headhunter. And the article I read had described it as being like a Skyrim horror movie. And if you've ever listened to any of our Game of Thrones episodes, you would know that Justin and I are big time fantasy nerds.
I was an artist in the medium of Skyrim.
Yeah, like when I saw that they compared it to Skyrim, I was like, okay, you know what? Usually I don't really care too much for a lot of I'm not a big horror movie person, which is what makes this so amusing to me. Like, yeah. I always try to watch horror movies, even though I know that I'm not going to like them.
I didn't think it was supposed to be a horror movie. When you sent us the stuff, like, hey, check this movie out, I thought it was just like a movie about Skyrim. I didn't know it was supposed to be a horror movie. And so I was like, why is this movie like a horror movie? Like, why is it trying to be a horror movie? Anyway, continue.
You didn't get the hint when I sent you the movie? I usually send you a horror movie around this time of year.
Yeah, I mean, I it's funny because, I was like, it's Halloween. I was like, shouldn't we do a horror movie? Like, what's up with this, like, this sword and sorcery movie? You know what I mean? Which I'm all about. But I was like, there's some horror movies. But then I get now having watched it. But at first I was like, it's weird. This movie doesn't really seem to have its tone. It's supposed to be sword and sorcery. But, man, the music and the whole thing, it's really trying to wave the horror flag,
It really does. And like I appreciate a lot of the aesthetic for the movie. So I don't know what the budget. I was trying to find out information on this movie, and I couldn't find much anything about it. I was really curious about the budget of this movie for a number of different reasons that I'm sure we'll get into. But it's actually like the cinematography is well done. Like the movie is competently made, but man, it's only 70 some odd minutes long, but it feels a lot longer.
Yeah.
So this movie is basically a one-man play. Like, you follow a warrior known only as Father.
I guess.
And that's the only thing he's ever... Yeah. I think that's actually what he's credited as, Father. And he's living in some shack, and I think when you introduce to this character, he's brewing some witcher's brew of some sort. Yeah. And like right away, I was like, okay, this is interesting. Let's see what's going on here. And it's basically the movie is just like a day in the life. It's almost like a day in the life of a Viking in the woods kind of thing.
I guess. I guess that's the thing is I didn't really feel. I felt that it was well, you continue describing it.
I mean, okay, so it's
because it was, I think, but it's like where were other people? Where were the other people?
Well,
no one lives by themselves in the woods. You know what I mean?
They alluded to the existence of other people because there was a castle nearby and there was somebody that kept blowing a horn every now and then. But
where were they?
They never showed up. So okay, and this is one of the things that I appreciate about what the movie tried to do. Like, if you have a one-man show like that, you really have to lean on your actor putting on a performance, which I think this guy, he was all right. He wasn't like, he didn't, blow me away with his chops or anything, but I don't think that he was, awful. I think he could have carried.
He didn't have a whole lot to work with, honestly.
Well, that's what I was going to say. He could have carried it if he was given a little bit more to work with. And it reminded me of a Robert Redford movie. I wish I could remember the name of it. It was one that came out just a few years ago.
Oh yeah, it's where All Is Lost, where he goes.
All Is Lost, yes,
that
where
was
he's
a great movie. Though.
It's a fantastic movie, and it's just him on a boat. Like, there's nobody else in that movie, but like, there's so many things about it. Like, if you're going to have a one person thing, you have to give him an adversary of some sort to make compelling something compelling to watch.
An excellent example, because yes, exactly.
And the adversary
that movie has a point. You know, from the very get go, what he's trying to do and what he's up against, and
right.
you know what I mean.
And
you know the stake. Everything is laid out. You know what I mean. There's not any like what is going on exactly. You know, with this movie, you had a lot of like.
Well, but not only that, but you get to see the conflict. Like when there's a storm, and like you get to see the boat like, you know, almost capsize, and he has to do all this shit just to survive on the sea, and like being able to see him put in a performance of surviving against these things that are, you know, ostensibly serving as an antagonist to him makes it a lot more compelling to watch. And in this movie, Headhunter, like, you know, he has an actual physical antagonist, you know, these creatures that he's hunting. But every time that there's something that could be compelling to watch, like the camera just drifts off to the side or to the sky or something.
It reminds me of that first season of Game of Thrones where they're going to have that first battle. And they're like, we're going to have this battle. And then it just cuts to the end of the battle.
We're going to knock Tyrion out just to save on the budget. Yeah. He slept through it.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Just like, and then and they only did it once in Game of Thrones. You only get one of those.
You only get one of those. And we're gonna put something awesome on the screen for you eventually, but for now, you're just gonna have to settle for this. So, like the first time they did that, I was like, okay, I get it and whatnot. And maybe that builds some suspense for something further.
Yeah.
But then the second time they do it, I'm like, come on, guys, this is just looking cheap now. And then the third time they do it, it almost felt like they were teasing me, they were bullying me. You know, like I want something fun to watch. Like there's this cool world that I think might exist because you have this guy.
They didn't build it at all.
How were they going to build it? You know, when he didn't have anything to work with besides his daughter's grave, and like that was really the only thing that alluded to anything close to a story. Something killed his daughter, right?
Yeah.
And he was working towards revenge, I guess. I don't know. He was collecting heads from monsters. So I assumed that those monsters had something to do with his daughter's death. But even saying that much is me, you know, taking liberties with what was given to us.
Yeah. I when I was watching it, it's funny. The only part that made sense to me was when he hears the door close, that stupid window. Because, like, holy crap, you know what I mean? That window opened up during the opening credits, you know? Yeah. And I watched it on headphones. So it was like, I was like, okay, they're really proud of the sound effect. Can we fucking get rid of that shit? And then, like, you finally see it, and then later on it plays a part, I guess, in the show. But at one point, he looks up, and he's like, motherfucker. And he goes and he tries to start sawing wood, I guess. He was going to fix it or something. That's what I got, that he was going to do something about that. And I was like, finally, something that makes sense. You know what I mean? There was something he saw that was a problem. He's going to fix that problem. Yeah. I'm seeing the basics of a narrative here. The other stuff is just,
you know, it's funny you mentioned that because, like, it seems basic. Like, oh, that window's creaky. I'm going to fix the creaky window. Like, that's such a basic thing. But all of the other parts of this movie, it's much more esoteric than that. Like, he was creating the sludge, but you had no idea what that sludge was for.
Yeah.
You had to wait until, like, it was given to you later, like, oh, he's using this, I guess, to heal himself.
Yeah.
You know, which is a cool reveal, I guess. But by the time you get to that point in the movie, you've already been drugged through such a tedious, laborious drag through a dull nothingness.
Yeah, that's the problem too. Is that, you know, they're trying to like plant little seeds that are going to sort of pay off later, but that doesn't make any sense. Like, and maybe it was just me, but I think in general, the movie for a movie of this low budget, you know, I mean, the budget had to be microscopic. Actually,
it had to be.
It looked pretty good.
That's what I meant. Like, it's competently made. Like, and then there are a lot of really cool things about it. Like, I like the props. The prop work was great. The settings was great. Like, a lot of they got their money's worth out of the drone that they had because they had a lot of those drone shots.
I'm actually, you know? I gotta say, I'm tired of that shit.
And I am too.
You see it in so many indie movies now where it's from above the trees looking down.
Right, looking down.
You know what
I mean, it's one of the easiest shots that you can get when you have no money.
Shutterstock. You know? There's like 50,000 of them. You know, drones flying over trees.
But like all of the stuff that makes it physically look like the cinematography is great. You know, all of the prop work and whatnot, that's fine. But there's still nothing compelling put on the screen. Like
I would say the cinematography is okay, and let me qualify that. I think it's lit well, and
Yeah.
it's, and it but the shots, the composition of the shots doesn't do a very good job of like of building the space that he's in. You know what I mean? It's like, in my opinion, like I know kind of what his house looks like on the inside, having watched it, but I
Yeah.
don't really.
That's
And
true.
I don't really know where he goes. What's the place with the candles? I don't know how that looks or how he gets there. It's really disjointed. It seems, and that's one of the issues I had. And it started from the very beginning when he's making this stuff. I'm like, can we pan back for a second?
Yeah.
And just give me can I see where he is? Like, what the fuck is happening? I mean, I get that he's making something.
Yeah.
You know, but it seemed like, maybe it's like we're gonna get these real, like we're gonna zoom way in with this thing coming out of the water, this line, and it's like, okay, that's cool. It's a cool frame up on one thing, but give us some context. It's it's like, what? Give me a shot a little bit of ways when he pulled the thing out of the water and he takes the thing out. I mean, I understand it's some of it's designed not to show you what it is, but
Yeah.
at a certain point, it's like, I understand. It's like the idea of Jaws, like never show the shark. But the thing is that they eventually showed the shark. You gotta show something eventually, because it's like after a while, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm just disconnected. I'm like, there's so much like inside baseball in this world, and it's like it's not particularly interesting to see anymore, and it becomes pretty rote really fast. Like
Right.
it's some more bones and some more skulls and super extra fucking close-ups of random, esoterra from his bony, scully, desiccated, meaty fucking shed that he lives
Right.
in. You know what I mean? And it got really old. And at no point did I really get a sense for, where he was and how he worked in this area. Because
Yeah,
the
and you
camera
never
doesn't
really-
move a lot. The camera, it's a lot of still shots framed up with lots of, focus, but
Right.
they don't move the camera through the space very much. I mean, maybe I have to go back and watch it, but that's not
I didn't get the sense. Well, and
No,
also
I don't
like
think they did.
and it doesn't really make like they're out in the middle of the woods, but you don't really get a sense of like how much traveling there actually is. Like he's in a couple of different scenes, but you don't know what content it could be. He's in a swamp, but is that swamp in his backyard? Is it 30 miles away, or like?
And then he goes to fight the main enemy.
And he's in like a dark ass cave that you can't see anything.
Well, no, I mean when he travels the distance and it shows him in the snow and he's talking to he talks to the guy who was killed and he's like, "What got you? A troll?"
Oh,
You know?
right.
And that, on his
That's true. I
journey
forgot
for
about that.
revenge,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you think like, okay, here's his journey. He's going to go and fight this fucking thing.
And honestly, that's probably the most compelling part of this movie. Is like when he was journeying to, because you thought that something
you were building to
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, at least you get to see the castle and you get it out of the woods. Like for a while, I was like, dude, it's like they shot this shit in a Renaissance fair over like 20 feet.
Yeah.
That's the entire setting. So it's like, okay, he's out looking around. Of course, they don't do anything interesting with any of that shit. He just walks. He has a camp. And at one point you think, oh, it's his camp along the way, but then it shows him walking and then back at the same camp. So it's like he went somewhere and he
And
maybe
came
came
back.
back. And then he comes back to the thing. It's done.
So let me ask you.
I-
Let me ask you this then. I'll pause this with both of you guys. What was the story?
Just,
Kelly, it sounds like you're on the verge.
Well, obviously, this thing killed his daughter,
Okay.
and eventually he's like final boss. I don't know. Like,
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's. We honestly that's still guesswork, right? Because we don't really know if that thing killed his daughter.
I think it did. I mean,
I
he
think
says,
he
you got
did.
to assume.
Did he
yeah.
say it?
Yeah,
Did he
will-
actually say it?
He says our revenge is he says our revenge is coming, and I think or our revenge is here. Our time for revenge has come.
Okay,
He
I must have
he
zoned out
finds
at
the
that line.
scroll. But again, he finds a skull. You don't really see the face of the monster he's looking for. Or the guy. They don't do anything to develop the villain who killed his daughter, and even the dialogue in the beginning where he's like, "Times change. I thought I could protect her." but times change. It's like,
What does that even mean?
well, yeah. How do those two sentences even go together? You know what I mean?
I wonder how you could have. I wonder how you could have gotten that additional information with just one actor, right? Like, I wonder if there's a way, because I'm thinking of, or at least in this particular setting, because when you do this sort of thing in a modern setting, there are things that you could use like photographs, you know? There are no photographs in whatever medieval fantasy land there is here. Like, there are things that you can use, objects that you could use in our modern time to help with the exposition of things.
Here's
right?
how I would rewrite this movie. Okay, you don't have any of the bullshit in the beginning. You know what I mean? Him talking about his daughter, that voiceover crap. That's just basically you've got a guy and he goes out and he hunts monsters. Maybe you see him fight. He goes out, he fights a monster, he kills it, he brings it back. There's other people in the village that think he's crazy, but he's obviously been on revenge and you don't know why. They say, like, you're going to get yourself killed going out and doing that. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, when he's dreaming, at night he has dreams and he sees his daughter in his dreams, but just in shots or whatever.
Yeah.
And you don't know what happened or why, but you know that it
okay.
obviously haunts him and he's been on revenge. So you can put those two things together.
Right.
And then he goes and he, if you're going to take the plot of the movie and basically rewrite that plot.
Okay, so I would say that there's probably a budgetary reason why there was such a restriction on actors and whatnot. But they obviously cast the daughter. Like, that's a character. So why was she in like the last microsecond of the movie? Like, you could have had a dream sequence or something like that, some kind of
where
flashback
you get to see
or
her
whatever.
be cute and understand and see him as a different person.
Right.
You know what I mean? Which you don't
yeah.
really get to see even in the flashback that you see. He's just kind of staring off into the woods like he's like people are going to come and kill her at all times. And maybe that's the world they live in, but it doesn't really seem like it has to be the world they live in. They seem like they were out traveling.
We don't know the world they live in.
It's exactly.
They're just in the
They don't
woods.
build it. That's
Yeah.
my point. It's like that in Skyrim, you know what I mean? If that's the idea, it's a Skyrim horror movie you didn't know you needed is how it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
There were towns full of people. In The Witcher, there are towns full of people.
Yeah.
People don't just live out in the woods by themselves. I mean, occasionally, you know what I mean? But they're usually it's close to a town because they've got to get stuff. You know what I mean?
And that's what I was saying. Like, they were close to something because you heard people blowing horns in the distance.
Were
But
those
this-
people or were those the monsters coming to attack a nearby village? Who fucking knows?
I guess that's true.
I mean, you've got every instance where it suggests some interesting, like, layer of the onion of world building. They never follow up on any of it. You know what I mean? And then the end game for is this bullshit horror plot where the guy who spends all this time brewing and then literally locking his potions down,
he
just leaves it
locked it
open on
right-
a fucking creaky
right
windowsill.
next to the window.
That we know he understands flaps in the wind because we see him try to fix it earlier in the only point of cognizant plot the whole movie gives us. So it's like he's like, I'm just gonna uncork this thing that I usually lock.
This
I'm
thing
gonna
that I
put it up-
rely on
Yeah.
because it heals me when a fucking monster gashes me. I'm just gonna keep it open, put it right on the
right
edge,
next to
next
Flappy
this
the window. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Old Flappy up there.
Old Flappy's
I
gonna
don't
take
think
care-
that's going to go wrong at all. You know what I mean? Or at the very least, it's going to waste his potion he spent all that much time brewing. It doesn't
Right.
make any sense. And the fact that is the
That's the
inciting
yeah, that's- yeah, the
incident
inciting
that
incident,
gets
yeah.
us to the fucking climax,
And
quote
that's-
unquote, of the
and-
movie is rough stuff, dude. I mean,
Yeah, and when I saw that scene happen, like when the and by the way, the way that window was knocking up against the glass was very unnatural looking, but I don't want to get into that
it was
I
obvious someone was like there with
Yeah,
their hand.
yeah,
fucking,
or just- yeah,
"Snurr,
exactly."
motherfucker," You know,
because it looked like it wasn't
Yes.
like the wind was blowing it. It looked like it was
it
being
was
jarred by a
very
force.
deliberate.
Yeah. Like, but like when that jar knocked over, I was like, really? Is this supposed to be where I'm like, oh no, oh my god, no, not the jar. You know?
I will say that when he tested on the spider, that
was interesting.
That was interesting.
That was interesting.
That was decent filmmaking. Instead of like being like, because they showed us, they didn't tell us how it works.
Right.
Although the problem
And
is,
it also
is the
showed
guy,
him discovering it too.
Yeah,
though.
but it's like he fucking brews it. Where
Yeah.
he doesn't know what it does. I mean, it's like honestly, if
well,
he
he
had
knows
this,
that it heals his wounds, but he didn't know that it could bring something back from the dead.
I guess. I mean, you know, you'd think he would have tried it on his daughter
You-
if he thought there was a chance that it would bring, you know, that would heal her.
yeah.
That's the thing. Think about it. If he definitely tried it on his daughter when she was attacked to heal her. You know what I mean?
Maybe. I don't know. You see, and this is also a part of like building the lore and the history of this world is like, how does this guy know how to make this weird
Yeah,
concoction?
is he
he's a warrior, but is he like a wizard warrior? Or
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't even need to have that explained. I can just buy like he's a wizard warrior.
Sure.
But the thing is, if like
But-
you're gonna
but what it
predicate
is it
the entire
introduces-
crux of the movie
it
on
introduces
his dead daughter.
yeah, but it introduces like a magic serum that
Sure.
could solve his core problem.
Exactly,
you
that's my
know?
point. His main issue, the thing that he wants most from the world, you know what I mean, he can solve at any point. You know what I mean? With what he creates, and he knows it's magical and heals him. I mean, we're supposed to assume that maybe he learned this trait after she died or something in his
Maybe.
quest for revenge. I mean, who fucking knows? I mean, at every point which you think you're going to get a little world building, they just fucking blow it off. And I understand they don't want to sit there and explain like this is the world.
Yeah.
This is the. But I mean, they're. You can overcorrect for that, you know, the other way, you know, to avoid
and
Brian's play. You
and
can
that's-
overcorrect.
Yeah, and that's funny because it is and that's another reason why I wanted to do this movie is because I think for all of the years that we've spent talking about movies and how much you've railed against exposition,
Yeah.
this is like
Yeah.
the one movie that is like it gives you exactly what you want,
Well,
which
the
is
funny thing is-
no exposition at all.
What I thought was interesting was I bring up The Force Awakens and the opening scenes with Rey a lot as
Yeah.
an excellent example of how it theoretically works. And this movie did similar things. It shows us his house, I guess, and it shows us him doing something, but it's inelegant in a sense that it shows us this stuff, but at the end of the day, we really don't know that much about this character.
Right.
Whereas in those few scenes with Rey, you learn a ton about her. You know what I mean? It's like you learn that she's been there a long time, that she's obviously she's waiting for something because she's marking it down. You know, you see her, she's self-sufficient, she's isolated. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
you get a whole series of things about her character. You get the sense that this guy had a daughter that he loved, but if he didn't tell us he loved her, if they had just shown us the scenes, we wouldn't even know if it was his daughter.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, he comes and it was, I mean, they tried, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The ending was really fucking terrible. I mean, we haven't even got to that yet. I mean, we've spent
Well, okay.
all this time kicking the shit out of the beginning part of the movie, which is probably the better part of the movie.
Beginning, middle. I mean, most of the movie is really what we've been talking about
Yeah.
here, which is the unfortunate
Well, it's all
part.
the same.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's hard to distinguish between an Act 1 and Act 2 in this.
No,
Like,
there's no
when-
real 3-act
yeah,
structure. That's
when-
another problem.
Yeah, like when the jar falls over, I guess you can call that like, you know, a transition to a second act.
Actually, I would say the inciting incident is when he finds the flyer. I can only call it a flyer with his enemy on it. That he realizes, like, now I have to go. Our revenge is nigh. That leads him into the second. The second act would be his trip there. You know what I mean? To fight the guy. He fights the guy. He comes back. You know what I mean? And then I would say the third act turning point would be when the thing spills
the
on the
thing
head
goes-
and we
okay.
end into the climax, the rising. You know what I mean?
Okay, fair enough.
But it's so we have to wait so long to get there.
Yeah.
And the thing is like there are rules to writing a screenplay, and you don't have to follow them, but you know
It helps if you do.
It can help. You know, they usually say you want to hit that inciting incident 10 pages in, so
Yeah.
10 minutes in. You know, you want to get
Yeah, and you know, so most of the movie is it is a movie that is built on this guy's journey, you know, and whether or not it's earned, to use that word as I've learned from the Game of Thrones outrage, if something is earned or not, whether or
Yeah,
not
I'm
this,
actually really tired of hearing the things you've heard
whether
from
or not this
people
was,
on the internet.
yeah, which is why I mentioned it.
Yeah.
Whether or not this was earned or not, like I can't say for certain. But what I will say is that like I have an appreciation for what it was trying to do. Like this isn't a movie that like I would still recommend this movie to people because I appreciate what it was at least attempting to do. Like I like that it was trying to create a story around a character that didn't really have, anything to work with but basically himself and his environment. I don't think it did it particularly very well.
I wouldn't recommend the movie personally, but I certainly respect anyone who makes a movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
In a broader sense.
I mean, they put a lot of work into it, and there were some things they did really, really well. The problem is, and it goes back when we were talking about animated movies and just generally why they're all so fucking good. You know what I mean? It's like you watch Toy Story 4 and Toy Story 3, and even some of the fucking second-rate, movies like Storks are surprisingly good from a script standpoint.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Compared to all the other movies that come out. And when I was like, why? We were talking about when Brad was here. I was like, why are those movies so good by comparison? And it's just like, well, it's because they take so long to make. And they can really, really, really work on those script things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They can go in. The script just gets really, really, really,
Like
honed and refined. And they can see things. They don't have to go back and reshoot anything. They can just remake it in the computer. If something's not working, when they see it, it's like, that just doesn't work. They got all the assets made. They just restage it, and so and they're not all great, but I'm surprised at the quality of those movies a lot of times. And I think this is an example of this, that they wanted to make a movie. They wanted to make a movie about guys with swords and shit.
I think more than that, they wanted to make a movie under a very strict budget.
Yeah.
Like I think that's really what comes out, and maybe this this can be seen as a key indictment from me, is like what comes out the most in this movie is its cheapness. Like I think that shines more than anything. I think it's competently made, like, and I do like the props and all that sort of stuff, but like it there's so little that it gives you from start to finish, and with whatever action scenes are there, because they all take place off camera, and there's really no other characters he's interacting with, and there's really nothing visually interesting on the screen.
Yeah.
Like it makes me wonder, like, what were you like? I want to know the budget of this movie. I really do, because if it comes out that this movie was shot for like $500 or something.
Oh no, it was
no.
much more than that.
Well, but if it was $500, I'd be like, okay, this is really super goddamn impressive.
Unless it's like a fan film where just like a lot of the props are already made by people that were in like a community or something.
And it could be that too.
Make a movie cheap like
and it
that.
could be that too. Like any of those, would be interesting to learn. But like if this was like, a $2 million movie or something.
No. I would say it looked to me like maybe they spent, between 50 and 150,000.
Yeah, I would probably say around there too. Maybe $50,000. This guy has a sword. He's killing monsters. So at least give me one. Like what I would have loved to have seen is like one scene. Even if they don't have great costumes, you could, if you had the money or just the luck of weather, have a fight in the rain in a dark forest where it's just pouring rain and there's something that looks like a monster in rags or something, and just have a really cool sword fight. It doesn't have to be like, you could hide a lot of the low budgetness of the costuming with the camera tricks and cool sword play and whatnot, and just have like a really cool sword fight. If it's a fantasy based film with a guy hunting monsters, he's cutting
It's called the
Headhunter. He's hunting fucking heads. He's putting them on his wall, but we never see that part of it. It's the most interesting. We see him all gashed up. We don't get to see how he got gashed up. We just see him all gashed up.
I would have settled for him lying in wait. You know what I mean? And you see a large monster or something come into the frame, and then he like drops down on it and stabs it, and then it like fucking flails around and bashes him all around, and it's like shot with it. It's not even really a fight. It's just him hanging on for dear life while this thing is thrashing, and then bashing him up against stuff, and they shoot it from a bunch of different, do a lot of cuts, so you don't really know. And then at the end, the thing dies, and he's all
just
fucked
falls,
up,
and he's like,
and he gets up,
and he looks grizzled,
exactly.
and he has that crazed look in his eye, or whatever,
Yeah.
and you could tell like he's coming off of something.
Yeah.
That would have been awesome.
That could have been. I would have settled for that.
Yeah,
Anything other than just he walks in and throws a head.
Well, no, it's just like he goes off camera, and then you hear like honestly the lamest sword sounding effects, like whoothing, 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 and then cut to him putting a head on a wall.
Yeah.
And like the monster's head looks like that's probably where all the budget went, is designing
Yeah,
those
some
monster
of those
heads.
heads looked pretty good.
Yeah, those heads look pretty cool. You know, that's probably where all the budget went. But like he puts the head on the wall and it's like, damn, I would have really loved to have spent the last 70 minutes watching him like at least kill one of those things in a somewhat decent scene.
Yeah.
And I thought I was
No
gonna
scene for you.
well, I thought I was gonna get that at the very end. Because he was walking into that cave or whatnot. And I was like, okay, well, it's very darkly lit in here, but it's obvious he's going to have an encounter with, you know, this thing. So when to back it up a little bit, that jar gets knocked off the window. Shortly after he comes home, he beheads something or he kills something and he puts its dead body in a sack and just drops it on his floor. Why he's so lackadaisical with this one, I'm not sure, but he's very loose with it. And when that window flap knocks that jar off of the pane, that healing slime,
Just happens to be open.
which happened to be open, it lands on the sack with the creature and it revives him. And he comes up and he's looking for a body. He keeps going body or whatever, something like that. And at some point he
somehow
he goes
gets
to the
attached
grave.
to the grave of the guy's daughter. And it's
Yeah,
her body.
and he takes possession of her body. When he comes and he finds out that her body is missing and all of that, like that's when he goes and hunts this thing again and ends up in this dark cave. And that's where I was like, okay, I might get something approximating what I wanted in like, you know,
Yeah.
maybe it's not super clear, but maybe I can get, you know, a decent action scene out of it. But that wasn't what we saw at all. In fact, it was way too dark, and the head that you do see when he's fighting, it looks like a Muppet head.
Well, it's terrible. And here's the thing: it doesn't. There's no stakes. At no point was I afraid this guy was going to be killed by this thing because he's obviously an utter badass. He killed the thing before in its real body.
Yeah.
He went and he found it and he kicked the shit out of it. You know what I mean? Now all it is a head with a fucking disembodied spine attached to a rotting skeleton
Of a girl, a
you
little
know,
girl.
of a little girl, and it's supposed to be a threat to him. You know what I mean? No, man. He fucking kicks the shit out of it. Which another thing is in the end when it somehow fucks him up after he's split it with an axe after stabbing it like 400 times. You know what I mean? Are we supposed to assume that the healing thing just keeps healing it up forever and ever and ever? I mean, it's just ridiculous. It just seems like they really wanted to. I would have rather him just like fix the window. That's what I thought they were going to do. I heard him sawing. I was like, oh, this is going to be great. They're going to end the movie with him fixing the window. Then you hear some fucking violent sounds, and then he puts his head on the thing. And then the guy goes like, body mine or something.
Mine, yeah.
Something so fucking stupid. I was like, really, guys? This is how you went out?
So I think whenever that horn blowing sound happened, like that was when he took a stick and whittled the point and put it on the wall. Yeah. So I'm guessing that horn was a signifier that a monster was present, or I don't really know how the rules of this world work. But yeah, so like he's good enough to have a wall full of all of these beheaded things, but then randomly at the very end, like seemingly for no reason, and you don't get like it's the way that the twist happened. Like I went to Alamo the other night and watched Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
And, you know, at the end of that movie, you know, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen Nightmare on Elm Street. But like, yeah, the girl is like, Freddy, you're not real, blah, blah, blah. And he disappears. And then she steps outside. She's like, it's so bright. And she gets in the car and then it turns out, it's a nightmare because the car has a mind of its own. And then Freddy comes, you know. So like, it's that kind of like a twist, the bad guy wins kind of ending, right?
Yeah.
But
she lives into the next movie.
Well, I don't know how
they didn't plan that out.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think with that first movie, it was like
she goes all the way to movie 3. I think she might actually live through 3.
Yeah, but I mean, I think at the end of that movie, the because they didn't know it was going to be a series, the attempt was that the bad guy won.
Yeah,
you know, which is what I guess they were going for with this too. But you don't get like there was such a moment, like there was like the reason why that works in movies that do it well like that is because there's so much more that is built up about the interplay between Freddy and Nancy or whatever.
Yeah, Freddy was terrifying.
Freddy was terrifying.
Someone that was like, I don't know when that movie come out, 1987 or
somewhere around there.
Yeah, I would have been 10 years old.
Was it 84?
I think Nightmare's 84.
Okay.
Oh, shit, I was 7 years old.
Yeah, you were way too young to watch them.
Yeah, but I mean, you'd see the advertisements on TV.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And people would talk about it at school. the idea of that, man, the idea, like, oh, it was
And
fucking.
we basically had those sequels our whole
terrifying.
childhood, so they were always on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
like
terrifying.
the idea, like because everybody goes to sleep.
I'll never forget, like, I don't know which one. It's either the first one or the second one. The first one's actually, Freddy's a lot scarier than the second one. He becomes kind of funny.
Yeah,
he
he's
makes more
definitely a
quips.
comedic person.
In the
and-
first one, it's straight up just fucking terrifying. But he's got his super long arms. I remember seeing the trailer with his super long arms. I scared the shit out of me. You know, just the trailer, just the ads on TV. And then you'd hear like, oh, he was a child molester and they burned him.
You know what?
I mean?
They never say molester in the movie because I always thought that he was a molester. I don't know where I got
He's
it
a
from.
child murderer?
He's a child murderer.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, which is kind of a funny thing because Freddy has a line too. He's like, "Hey, I don't fuck him. I just kill him." You know.
Did he say that?
No, I'm just saying that would be the defining line that makes.
I wouldn't surprise me if
because
he said
Freddy
that.
because people like Freddy Krueger. They can't like him if he's like a child molester.
Well, they liked him eventually. In the original movies, I mean, like number one especially, he's not likable at all. By the time you get to Nightmare on Elm Street 4, where
He's
he's playing
quipping.
video games and
Yeah.
shit,
Yeah,
you're like,
yeah, exactly.
it's just like you want him to win.
Now
you're rooting
playing
for
with
Freddy.
power.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Which
now
makes
you're playing with power.
Which makes
yeah.
me wonder if maybe he was a molester and they went back and dubbed murder over a copy
They
somewhere.
George Lucas did.
Yeah,
They gave him an Australian accent.
but anyways, like so like the way that this one ends, like because you don't really even know who his adversaries are. Like, are all of these monsters related in some way? Like, are they all the minions of this master monster that he fights at the very end, or is this monster just a random one? Like, I don't really get what any of that what any of those relations are. And so because you don't ever see him, you don't ever really see him actively struggle against any of that. Like at the very end, even when he's struggling with that particular creature, you don't really see it very well anyways. You don't really feel like there are stakes involved in it because, I mean, what would the stakes be?
Borderline invincible. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why it's all the more ridiculous when the chopped up, disembodied spinal column of this thing somehow gets the drop on him
Yeah.
and cuts his head off.
Yeah, and so like when
How did he even do that?
yeah, I don't know.
He's got no body.
Big question mark there,
And
but
it's
it was
just-
like they just needed that ending.
Well, why
they
not just have like fucking, Jaws the shark like come through the door and be like, "Raw, I'm Jaws." It makes about as much sense, you know what I mean?
I guess that was really the bummer of that ending is that like you felt like it felt to me like they wrote that ending before anything else. You know, like it's got to end where you think he's going to kill the monster and put the monster's head on the wall, but then it's actually revealed when the body moves that it's his head. It's like, okay, how do we get there? And like, well, we
Yeah.
have a budget, so
Well,
we can't hire
it's-
any other actors.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, there's a cabin in the woods we could use. Okay, that's great. So we can't hire actors. What about costumes? Do we have a lot of monster? We can have like the DP dress up as a goblin. It's like,
It looked like it was shot in Europe somewhere.
it
so
was probably it's probably a European film. Like I don't know the director Jordan. I wanted to say Schlansky, but that's a Conan O'Brien reference there. I forget who he is. They don't really have a lot of credits. It was written by the dude
Yeah.
that wrote Thanksgiving.
Okay, I saw it. The cinematographer was also the writer,
The cinematographer
and
was,
also the director.
That
Also, the director co-wrote.
okay.
Okay, well, the cinematographer being the writer makes a fuck ton
I
of
almost
sense.
wanted to say something earlier when you were talking about that.
What's up?
Well, no, you were saying how great it looked. I was thinking, I'm like, well, maybe.
Well, what I was saying, what I meant by that is that it does seem, again, the cinematographer wanting to photograph some stuff, and you know what I mean, driving the story. It's like,
Yeah.
I want to. We're gonna shoot some stuff, and it just seemed like it was, in some ways, pictures that they connected with the thinnest of tissue. You know what I mean?
You know, the funny thing is, like, so far, like I said off the top of this, is that this movie has gotten a lot of positive press. Like, I think there are only 10 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, but they're all positive, so it's technically a 100% movie.
And
Well, it had
that's what got my attention. I was like, oh, this little small, movie. Okay, because I have this weird thing about catching up on every movie possible.
Yeah.
I can't help it. So when I saw this one, oh, cool, I can get this one from my library for free through Hoopla.
Yeah.
That's why. Yeah, but
So you got lured in by the positive press, too.
yeah, and
It
I
had-
thought the poster, the guy, just the
And the guy looks cool in the
yeah,
poster.
he's decked out and everything in
Yeah.
the picture. Yeah,
Yeah, I was just like, okay, I didn't know what to expect. I wasn't expecting a horror movie, and I didn't really.
We
get
did
one.
get one. I don't know what genre I would classify this
The
as.
music thought it was a horror movie.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, God, man, the music is competently made and sounds cool, but it's just, I don't know. I just kind of feel like I'm watching The Walking Dead or something like that. Only I'm not watching The Walking Dead. I'm watching a guy in the woods just fuck around. You know what I mean?
You're watching The Walking Dead, like, 30 feet to the left. you know?
No, exactly.
Oh, man. Well, that's unfortunate. I really wanted this movie to be better than what it actually turned out to be.
I like the
But
idea.
I
though.
did like the idea, and I like the effort.
I was actually a different idea. I like the idea of doing these things with movies that are a little bit more like, instead of just taking a crappy movie and being like, this movie's crappy.
Yeah.
But taking movies that maybe aren't getting, that could be good or could be interesting and aren't getting like the wide release or aren't getting, and kind of talking about them, because there's a lot of movies made, you know what I mean, and shown more than ever, I guess, because there's so many places now to stick movies.
Yeah.
And I think some of the stuff gets
Was
kinda
this
under
this
the rug.
director's directorial debut?
No. What was the name of we had? What was it?
I know that the writer.
Thanksgiving.
I know the writer
Well,
directed Thanksgiving, right?
It's the two writers were the cinematographer and the director.
What are their names?
Okay, the director's name is Jordan Downey.
Jordan Downey, that's what it is.
Yeah, he what is it? Thanksgiving 1 and Thanksgiving 3 didn't get to make
Not
part 2.
Okay. So he directed Thanksgiving 1 and 2. Okay, so this is his third movie, I guess.
For full length, yes.
Full length. Okay. Well, I mean, he's kind of hovering in the low
The
budget
other, the writer,
realm.
the cinematographer, has a lot of cinematography credits on shorts and comedy stuff, including, if this is correct, that really famous Captain Planet spoof with Don Cheadle.
Really?
From Funny or Die, wasn't that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw that. I saw the picture and I was like, wow.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, I was like, all right.
I never watched that.
It's pretty funny. You should YouTube it.
It's early Funny or Die days.
Yeah, it was
it
really
was like
Funny or Die
first
days.
years of YouTube.
Yeah, well, I mean, I in the future I'll try to find more of these kind of films to do. I liked, and again, I will stress that I would recommend this for people with the caveat that I didn't really enjoy it, but I think I can understand how some people might get an enjoyment out of it. I think because I've seen this style of film, not necessarily fantasy horror, but like the one-man show, because I've seen it done so well before, I think my expectation of it, knowing that that's what it was way higher than it should have been. Like, I really, really loved that Robert Redford movie.
It's a good movie.
And I had a ton. When I watched that movie, I was blown away by how captivated I was just watching one dude. And that's even more limited in a way than this guy, because he was on a boat
he's on a
in the
boat.
water. Like, he can't go
But
to
the thing about that movie was so good is it kind of it drilled down into the kind of like, I've got a toothpick and a flashlight and a can of sardines and I've got to survive and I've got to
like the
and so-
survival
exactly.
the survival instincts of it, like almost the MacGyver type aspect of, man, this guy's got to survive on a, what's he going to do when now the boat's leaking and he's going to do this and that, or the storm's coming, how is he going to survive
and then
the storm?
finally at the very, very end, he's just like, fuck it, this is done. It's over. You know what I mean? I've gone as far as I can go.
Yeah, I would
that's a
have
good
liked to.
movie.
Like, I feel, and maybe a part of the cheapness with this movie is the fact that guy did have that miracle healing ointment. Maybe it would have been more interesting if we had to watch him survive, getting more and more wounded after each fight. Like, he fights a thing and like, he's got this gash now, and then now he has to make do with only using one arm or something. Or and maybe that would have been, maybe that
It would
wouldn't
only
have.
have been interesting if you actually
If you
had
had
to
to
see
watch him
struggle
fight,
with
yeah.
the fucking thing with one arm.
Yeah.
I would have just liked to see some other people.
Yeah.
I'd like to see this guy talk more than talk. I mean, what he said to his daughter about the arrowheads, and he mentioned some fucking war that happened off screen at some point. And that was interesting. I was like, okay, well, there's a little bit of world building there. At one point, you see a book, and the book's got a bunch of random shit in there, but you just see it for a second. And
There was a book?
Oh yeah. At one point, he's a book, and it's like the something of the ring, and the
Yeah, Lord of the Rings.
It wasn't Lord of the Rings, but it was like something of the ring, the rights of the ring, and then one of it was like rights of the king. It was like he had to do multiple pages, and he just kind of skimmed
Ring King? Are you sure it wasn't Lord of the
Yeah,
Rings?
I'm pretty sure, but they don't. That's it. They didn't touch any of that. They don't. And they don't have to like go and literally have him read me the fucking book. But
Yeah.
it's just like I didn't feel what I felt like was I was watching some guys make a cheap movie out in the woods in what was probably like Ukraine or
Yeah.
or like northern England or something. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? What I didn't feel like I was seeing was a fantasy setting full of characters that were believably alive. You know
Right.
what I mean? And but making movies is hard. They made it and it didn't look like shit. I'll give them that.
Making
You know what I
movies
mean?
is hard.
And so, I mean, it's better than all the movies I've made, which is exactly zero. So, I'll give them that.
I have a recommendation with an asterisk next to it. I'm guessing Justin doesn't have a recommendation.
Yeah, I would pass on this one, but maybe they come back and let's just maybe this was like their this was their Velociraptor testing the fence kind of deal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe they're finding out they're finding how to make it work, and their next movie will be better.
Kelly
Well, it looked great.
looked great.
But yeah, it's the basic thing is just we didn't get enough
Yeah.
of what it was. Now, you were just speaking about, this is half related, talking about the lone person in a movie sort of one, all by
Yeah.
themselves. Not really related, but if you're looking for a 2019 one that's about a great actor who is almost on his own the whole time, Mads Mikkelsen in that Arctic movie earlier in the year, the survival one.
I wanted to see that. I remember
I have it.
because he
we'll
was in
watch.
another one called Polar, and I got
that
I got
movie.
those two movies
Yes.
mixed up. I was
I
like,
remember you watched that and you're
Yeah.
like, yeah, I told you. I remember saying, Devin, this movie Arctic with Mads is really great. And then
and
you
I
just
was like,
went
oh
to
yeah,
Polar.
I'm gonna watch this.
that
I watched
Netflix
Polar,
one.
and I was like, this is fucking
That was
trash.
not good.
Yeah. Did you watch that one, Polar?
No.
Oh boy, stay away from it. But I will watch Arctic.
Yes, that was good.
I'm trying to think if I've seen anything recently. I tend not to watch. Oh, you know what? I did see. I tend not to watch movies on TV. Usually, I just watch YouTube or a show, but usually just YouTube. Because a movie asks hilariously.
A lot, yeah.
I'm a film major and I like movies and stuff, but when I'm watching TV, a movie asks a lot. You know what I mean? You got to pay attention. You can't look at your phone or just. And usually, I'm doing a couple other things. However, I watched Green Room.
Oh, that's one of my
man.
favorites.
Oh,
I
holy
love that.
We were
shit.
just recommending that to someone
Was
the other
that
day.
a good?
Yeah.
Was that an intense movie or what?
Green
man?
Room.
I
Okay.
can gush about that movie for
And
a
we
while.
could, and I will say, like, we could sub out, Headhunter for Green Room for a Halloween recommendation because that movie's plenty terrifying too, especially
Ernie
is-
Solane.
especially if you're a minority who's ever been to like a punk show like in a small town somewhere. You know,
Well-
I have some experience with that.
I have some experience with it too, and the shit was scarily authentic.
Accurate, yeah.
You know what I mean? There were, in the early '90s, there were always a couple of skinheads at your high school that
Yeah.
were wearing the colored laces and doing this shit, and I had friends that were like adjacent to some of that weird shit because there were different skinhead groups. There were the non-racist skinheads.
Yeah.
There were the race, and they had different colored laces and all this kind of shit. But it was a terrifying movie.
Yeah, it
'Cause
really
those
was.
fuckers are nuts, and that shit is crazy town.
Yeah,
and
not
they
only
did a
that, they're-
great job.
They're
of
nuts. It's
capturing
crazy
that.
town. It's out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
and like you can't really trust like local law enforcement to be on your side in those kinds of situations.
No.
It's kind of it's yeah.
Although
plus,
that wasn't so much a factor.
That
in
wasn't
that
a factor in
movie,
this movie, but-
I certainly thought about it.
yeah, like,
it's like,
what are you
well,
gonna do?
Maybe these guys are, white supremacists too. You call
Yeah.
them; they're going to help them hide.
All sorts of factors.
It
you
was
know?
terrifying.
And you get a very terrifying performance from Patrick Stewart in a role that I never thought I'd ever see him in.
Yeah.
Which was great and crazy and frightening.
Yeah, that was a really, really intensely creepy movie. And from it's similar. When I was on the road with a Texas country luminary who I will not name as their their mixer guy.
Yeah.
We would play kind of podunk shit kicker bars in the middle of nowhere that the vibe was a different vibe, but not that different. You know what I mean? And it was, it was scary and disturbing. And I could see, I understand I just, that movie, like those guys being on tour and not having any money and being like, how the fuck are we going to get from here to there? We got stiffed. We're going to fucking pick up a show.
Yeah.
I've been in that situation. And it's just, just the idea they're playing this weird ass show in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then I was like, it was intense, man. By the end of that movie, I was like, although I got to say, those guys, they did not make the smartest decisions. Not that, like when they left, the one guy basically just jumped into the mouth of the fucking pit bull. You know what I mean? The pit bull's really only about 1.5 feet off the ground. And somehow it just, and pit bull's scary, don't get me wrong, but
they can do damage.
Yeah. They kill people all the time. But,
so that's our recommendation. Ultimately, at the end of this, go watch Green Room.
Yeah, Green Room. Was intense.
If you have some spare time and you can do other things and while you're watching it, sure, give Headhunter a shot. Green Room, watch that.
Yeah, I also saw a movie on Netflix. It's a horror movie called The Babysitter. It's a new movie.
Was that like the 80s style one?
It wasn't 80s style.
Well, I think the logo or the fashioning of it.
It was a Mick G movie. Mick G was the
director who
directed shit in the 90s.
I remember that.
Yeah,
it
we
was
talked about
not
that
particularly good.
No,
but it was moderately entertaining, but it wasn't good. It wasn't even close to good. But yeah, I watched all of it, I guess. A movie I did see recently in the theater that I thought was great was that Tarantino movie. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I haven't seen that one yet.
That movie was legitly great.
Yeah, that's still on my list to see.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it for our Halloween episode, guys. You got your recommendations. Headhunter, if you want. Green Room is a must.
Or just one more thing. Green Room made by Jeremy Solonay. Great new guy. It's why he got the True Detective job this year.
And he
did
Blue
brought
Ruin.
True Detective back. Although he did the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, he was supposed to do all of them, but no.
It would have been great if he'd done all of them.
Another color name movie. He made the revenge movie Blue Ruin before Green Room.
Oh yeah, I've heard.
Another
I've
great
heard that.
small budget revenge.
Blue Ruin is awesome.
Violent.
Yeah.
And Hold the Dark.
Hold the Dark, the Netflix movie from last year.
Okay, now that I heard was really good.
I saw it at Fantastic Fest last year on the screen. It was great, big. His budgets keep getting bigger. That's why I was telling Devin, I can't wait to see what they let him do next.
Hold the Dark was actually really good.
Dan and Dave just left Star Wars, and they give him Star Wars.
I think it's a little out of his expertise, or not expertise, but out of his taste, I guess. All of his movies kind of have a similar vibe.
I would like to hear him interviewed. I would like to. He had to do some Green Room interviews. He must have spent some time in a punk scene.
Oh yeah,
to get that
vibe down right.
That right. You know what I mean? Because that was the movie could have had no violence and just gone there. They played the show and left, and it would have been terrifying. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Like just the vibe of the venue,
the vibe of the venue, and the people was terrifying.
And then they decided to antagonize them by playing Nazi punks fuck off. I mean,
that was the worst decision they probably could have made.
I was thinking, what the fuck are these guys doing?
You make a point in Berkeley, California, but when you're in this place, you just stick to your set and get the fuck out of there.
Get your money and bolt, dude.
Yeah.
That was